1.
Hello, this is State Representative Brad Stevens. I want to welcome you to my special live teletown hall meeting on Illinois government. This morning I'm coming to you from my legislative office to discuss the latest news about the state of Illinois government and where we stand in the coronavirus pandemic. During this call, we'll be sharing some very important information, and if after the call you have any questions about this information, please contact my office. If you're participating online, you can also submit questions in the comment box below the video. Now, Sean from my office is going to give you our contact information. Sean?
Our office email is stevens@ilhousegop.org, and our office phone number is 773-444-0611. Also, you can sign up for email updates from our website by going to Stevens, STEPHENS.com. That's Stevens with a PH.
Thank you, Sean. We will be sharing that information periodically throughout the call. We're going to be taking your questions in about 10 minutes. If you have a question that you would like to ask, please press *3 and you will be put in the queue to ask a question. We will begin in just a moment, as there are still people who are joining in. Today I wanted to take some time to discuss the state of Illinois government. I'm going to briefly discuss where we are as a state in regard to the coronavirus pandemic and the process for reopening our economy in a safe manner, what happened during the special session at the end of May, what bills passed, and where our state's budget stands. Then we'll touch on some current events, and we'll wrap it up with the rest of the time on the call answering your questions. Back in January, session started. It almost feels like it's forever ago. I sponsored 9 bills that I thought would help the district and have some meaning in the 20th district. Some of those things that were being accomplished with these bills would be to help reduce and monitor O'Hare noise pollution, assisting in removing graffiti on the new sound barrier wall that was constructed along the Kennedy Expressway. We were successful in working with the contractor on removing that on a short-term basis, but the bill that I introduced would increase penalties and be a little bit more of an enforcement tool. Also reduce the price of insulin, and I believe it was more focused on the deductibles for that, and help our first responders cope with PTSD, and reduce travel time to get your car's emissions test done. I know that over the past several years, they've closed down quite a few of these facilities, and we're just trying to make it where it's more accessible to folks. Unfortunately, due to the COVID outbreak canceling most of the session, none of these bills moved. I'm looking forward to resubmitting these bills once we go back into session and begin working again. In January, I had an unfortunate accident at home. I fell, and upon getting an X-ray and checking that X-ray with the doctors, they realized that I had an issue with a hip replacement from several years ago that needed immediate attention and was requiring surgery. That was done at the end of January, and 6 weeks went by with rehab and all the necessary follow-ups, and I was finally released to be able to get back into session and get behind the wheel of my car again. And unfortunately then we had a COVID outbreak. At that point, the outbreak was declared a state of emergency and the economic shutdown began. And after being home due to surgery for 2 months, that was the last thing that I wanted to see happen, just to get to stay home a little bit longer. Despite the legislature not meeting for over 2 months, there was still work to be done. With everything that was going on, I wanted to be sure you all had as much information as possible. I held telephone town halls like this one with doctors discussing the coronavirus, also with experts helping answer questions regarding issues with unemployment. We also held one for small business owners, trying to help them navigate the grant and loan programs available to help mitigate the losses suffered due to being closed. I also fought for COVID-19 related deaths to be classified as line of duty, also to ensure that the first responders and healthcare workers who were serving on the front lines are at the front of the line when treatment becomes available. And further, we called for property tax relief, as our already burdensome tax levies were placing additional strain on many of our residents and businesses facing financial hardship during this time. Finally, in late May, the Speaker reconvened the General Assembly for a very unique session held in the Bank of Springfield Center. It was a shortened session where we focused on issues having to deal with the COVID pandemic. In total, there were 24 bills that were sent to the governor for signature. First one that I want to address is the budget and the implementation in a borrowing plan, which were three separate measures. During this special session, the budget was proposed and subsequently passed on a party line vote. It was a budget that I could not support. It spends $42.8 billion, which is actually $2.4 billion more than last year. By some estimations, the budget is out of balance by $6 billion. And also included in that was a separate measure that authorized a $5 billion borrowing plan, which I'm not sure how we're going to repay that. But again, that was a Democratic initiative. Unfortunately, Speaker Madigan and the Democrats refused to take up my colleague Charlie Meyer's House Bill 5777, which would have rolled back the pay raises and per diem increases that we wanted to have it legislated rather than just the agreement that we were told on the House floor that the Democrats forged with the comptroller. We've seen this in the past where an outgoing legislator sues to get that money and everybody just gets it because it's part of the law. That's why this law was, or I should say this legislation was introduced. If in fact something like that were to happen and the pay raise and those increased per diems were to make it to my paycheck, I have personally decided that that'll go to a non-for-profit or a charity organization within the district. The Chicago casino bill, actually the casino was approved in the spring session of 2019, and there was a mechanism in there for a review of the taxation on that, and that review came back and said that there needed to be some more work, that it was just wasn't feasible to be able to maintain that tax level. So there was a cleanup bill that came through and changed the taxation on that casino to get it to the point where now the city can move forward with it. The casino bill, this casino bill did a few things, and it was important to get this legislation moving. One is it created funds to help fund the Capitol bill, which I think everybody around the state knows that we've got some issues with our infrastructure and that we needed to provide some revenues for that. More importantly, it provided funding for the Chicago Police and Fire pensions. Being a big supporter of all first responders, I think that that's important that we keep our promise to provide for that. Additionally, on a little lighthearted note, we worked to help pass a bipartisan initiative that would allow restaurants to sell cocktails to go. It's a 1-year trial period. The restaurant can make you a drink and package it, and that drink then needs to go in your trunk, and you can order dinner and a rum and coke or a margarita to take out with your Mexican food. Take it home and enjoy it just like you were sitting in the restaurant. And I know that some folks are anxious to get back into restaurants as well. IDES has always been an issue during this last several months. I'm going to continue to put pressure on the governor and IDES to fix the intake system. We're still getting calls on a daily basis from people who cannot get their claims processed. It's been nearly 3 months since the stay-at-home order has first been put in place, and some folks just aren't getting what they're rightfully entitled to. You know, the governor spent $22 million on a no-bid contract to upgrade the unemployment system, and that was money that was just wasted, I believe. The system either lags or crashes. People can't do basic things on the site, like update their addresses, but hackers can get in there and get access to some folks' critical information, and there was a little lag in responding to that issue as well. Working with a group of Republican legislators, that we are calling for an audit and have called for an audit of the system and of the contract. Before I get into the COVID update, I'd like to have David ask a poll question and ask about your feelings regarding the current state of the coronavirus pandemic. David?
Hi, we're going to have a couple of poll questions today, and the first poll question is, what do you think about the state's reopening timeline that they have set up? So all you have to do is on your keypad, press 1, 2, or 3. Press 1 if you think the state is reopening too fast. If you think we're concerned and should slow down, press 1. If the state is opening at about the right pace, press 2. So press 2 if you think we've got it about right, or press 3 if you think the state is opening too slowly. So you press 3 if you think the state is opening too slowly. Okay, back to you, Brad.
Thanks, David. So far in Illinois, we've had 134,000 coronavirus cases and 6,500 deaths, according to data from the Department of Public Health. For about the last week, we've had under 1,000 cases every day and are one of the first states to actually come down and bend the curve. We also were one of the first states to come up to the peak. We're currently in phase 3, and according to the governor's office, every region in the state is scheduled to be moving to phase 4 on the 26th, which is a week from Friday or Saturday this week. In phase 4, which again, they're still writing the guidelines to be more exact to send out to everybody. That's the folks at DCEO. Some of the things that we've been told are going to be allowed to happen are gatherings are going to be able to be up to 50 people, not the 10 that we're at right now. We've been told that phase 4 will be a longer phase and that there will be sub-phases within that phase, that certain things may change on an ongoing basis. So again, these are just what we've been provided so far. DCEO has the final say on what happens and what guidelines change on an ongoing basis. So again, gatherings of 50 or more or 50 or less people are going to be allowed. All healthcare providers will be open. Pre through 12th grade schools, higher education, all summer programs, and child care will be open, again, with Department of Public Health approved safety guidance. And finally, all recreation will be allowed outside, and we'll be able to hopefully enjoy the summer a little bit. Businesses, manufacturing will open again with the Department of Public Health, approved safety guidance. Non-essential businesses will be able to return to work finally. Again, employers are encouraged to provide accommodations for COVID-19 vulnerable employees. Bars and restaurants will be open with some allowed capacity, and again with guidance provided by the Department of Public Health. Today we can have sidewalk cafes open, and you can go inside of a facility up to so many feet, and we're thinking that they're going to issue the guidance that says we can have a certain percentage. My estimate is it'll be somewhere between 30 and 50% of occupancy, but again, we're waiting, and that's due any day from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity to let us know what those capacity limits are. Several other industries will also be able to open. Fortunately, we've had barbershops and salons that opened already. Now we're going to be able to have gyms and spas and cinemas and movie theaters, as well as all-on retail stores, which is important for our sales tax and for the ability to get people out into the public. One thing that I want to address is everything that's sort of blowing up in our world today. I, as an individual, am listening to all of the comments being made regarding the George Floyd incident, this incident in Atlanta, and obviously there needs to be something done. I think that today we need to work to find what unifies us and not so much on what separates us and segregates us more. I think that it's important that we properly fund our police, but I also understand the discussion on moving resources around at the City of Chicago level and others. But those will be decisions that should be made within those political units themselves, not something that's going to be mandated by the state. I think that it's got to be carefully thought out and carefully discussed, and I think that together we can find a common ground to reunify our country, because we're in a sorry state today, and I think everybody can understand and believe that. So now, before we open it up for questions, I'm going to turn it over again to Sean to give that contact information. Sean?
Okay, our office email is stevens@ilhousegop.org, and the office phone number is 773-444-0611. Also, you can sign up for email updates from the website by going to repstevens.com. That's Stevens spelled with a PH.
Thank you, Sean. Now, if you'd like to ask a question, again, it's press *3 at any time, and I will turn it over to David.
Hi. Thank you, Representative, for your thoughts. Remember to press *3 if you have a question. Our first poll is about to close, so if you haven't responded, please respond. The question, just as a reminder, is what do you think about the state's reopening timeline? If you think the state is opening too fast, press 1. If the state is opening about right speed, press 2. And if the state is opening too slow, press 3. Our first question is going to come from online. And somebody asked, how are we going to pay back the $5 billion in borrowing that you mentioned earlier?
Well, in my comments, I did state that that's uncertain. I believe that the democratic thought process, since this was passed along a party line vote as well, that I think they're hoping for a Hail Mary from the federal government to assist in that. Again, the spending plan and the implementation of that was also met with resistance from the Republican caucus, and we're going to have to monitor and hold the feet to the fire of the governor and the Democratic members to understand how that's going to happen. Again, I was a no on that, as were I believe the entire Republican caucus.
Thank you. Our first question comes from Edward, and he has a question about the walls and who is financing them for our infrastructure. Edward, you should be on the line.
Thank you. My question is twofold. A, who's financing these walls? And then B, how do they take precedence over other crumbling infrastructure when the people that are in the vicinity of the expressway bought knowing that expressways are there, and now all of a sudden it's urgent that we put these walls up for sound and privacy and whatnot?
I believe that those decisions are made at IDOT, and it's part of their multi-year plan on an ongoing basis. My understanding is that those sound walls are being put in throughout the system anytime there is any new construction on the highways, and it's being funded through the general revenue. And I'm sure that there's a lot of federal funds that come into play there and whatnot. So again, I think that for the most part, the constituency is in favor of that, putting those walls in, and I think that's why they now become very commonplace in any of the highway construction programs.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Linda from Chicago, who has a question about her stimulus check. Linda, you should be live.
Yes, I'm on the phone. That I do not know why, after all this time, I still have not received the stimulus check. That I fall within the monetary boundaries, and so I feel that I am entitled to that. They also, since I'm on Social Security, they already have my banking information, and it hasn't come through that either, and I've seen nothing in the mail.
Well, thank you for your question, and I don't want to sound like I'm passing the buck. Those are federal stimulus funds, but we'll have somebody, I believe we have Linda's number. Linda, we'll have somebody from our office follow up with you and see if we can't help you get that check that sounds like you're rightfully owed.
Okay, and our next question comes from Chris from Chicago, and he's asking about nursing homes. Chris, you should be live.
Yes. I have a nephew who is in the nursing home, and he's in his late 30s. His mother passed away 2 months ago from the virus. We haven't had a chance to even bury her. He didn't even have a chance to say goodbye to her. I want to be able to get him out of there and at least get him out having some fresh air. I want to know what can be done about those people who are in nursing homes, who are not sick.
So just provide me some more information. Who is he his own guardian?
Chris fell off the line, but we can, if she presses.
We'll follow up with her. We have that number. We have her number, and we'll follow up with her on a more one-on-one basis, and hopefully to get some answers for her.
Our next question is from Dean, who is asking about programs available for businesses like hospitality. Dean, you should be live.
Hello?
Oh.
Hello. My question is: are there any programs that will be created for businesses that have been hit the hardest from this pandemic? Economically, we've suffered the most. We're the first to close, and we're the last to open with very limited, if at all, ability to operate. Is there any type of relief or any type of programs that will be available?
Is that Steve? Are you still there, Steve? Or Dean? I'm sorry.
Dean.
Well, I'll answer that question the best I can. There's continuing talk about.
The state did provide some hospitality.
You're back, Dean?
I'm sorry?
Oh, you cut out for a while. It was silent. I think what you're asking
sorry.
is, you in the restaurant and hospitality industry?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well. Could you repeat the question?
You operate in the restaurant and hospitality industry, is that
Correct.
Okay, I know that that there's ongoing discussions trying to provide some assistance for folks in your industry. I don't know of anything off the top of our head, but we'll do some research and see if there's anything directly available. I completely understand where you're coming from. You know, it's unfortunate that we should be allowing folks to think for themselves. There are some folks that have no problem going out and going to a restaurant, and if a restaurateur wants to open their facility and do the right things along the guidelines, I don't see why that's not being allowed. And let's hope that come the 26th there will be some softer guidelines that allow for that. But again, we're trying to be compliant here, and we're trying to do the right thing, and I think everybody appreciates that. But it's also time to get back to a little sense of normalcy, and slowly but surely. I'm not in favor of throwing the doors open and saying, okay, let's have the Wild West, because we see some of the repercussions of that issue right there. So again, we have your number, Dean, I believe, and we will follow up with you as well to see if there's anything or anywhere where we can direct you to. I'm not sure that DCEO is handling any of this, but we'll make sure we get you the right people.
And that's actually a very good transition, because our poll results are in. Nearly 200 people responded, and 19% of people said the state is reopening too fast. That was 19% said opening too fast. 46% said the state is opening at about the right pace, and 35% believed that the state is opening too slow. Representative Stevens, do you have any thoughts on the poll?
I could see that through the people that I talked to, that a good majority, I shouldn't say majority, a good number of folks are satisfied. And again, I want to reiterate, I think that it needs to be a steady climb, but I think we need to allow those that want to open it at a little better clip to do so. I'm not understanding the 28-day period versus the 14-day period before we advance to the next phase, like most of the United States is advancing at. So again, I appreciate when the governor talks about the science behind this, but I think that folks want to have a little bit more information as well.
Thank you. And we're going to have another poll question in just a couple of minutes. We have a question about the income tax that's due on July 15th from Norm in Chicago. Norm, you're on the line.
The state income tax is currently, the deadline is July 15th, and the state income tax office in Des Plaines is currently closed. So I'd like to know if you know when that office is going to open, or is the deadline for filing the state income tax for last year going to be extended past July 15th?
I have not been given any information to lead me to believe that is going to be extended at any point right yet. I'm hopeful that with the transitioning to phase 4 and most businesses being allowed to open on the 26th, that will be the case for the for all of the state agencies as well.
Thank you. We have one more question that's coming in online, and the question is, can you talk about the legislative pay raise and why the legislators voted themselves a pay raise?
It's part of an ongoing annual increase that the Republican Charlie Myers introduced the bill to basically put an end to freeze salaries where they were. The topic came up on the discussion on the House floor, and Leader Harris said that they had an agreement with the comptroller to not add it to the paycheck when that fiscal year, I should say, ends on June 30. So it's a cost of living increase that's been legislated. So that's why Representative Myers introduced House Bill 5777. That was to end that increase and to just eliminate it at this point. Again, I think that there will be several of us that, if that in fact does hit the paycheck, that we will return that or return it to a much better cause, whether it's a non-for-profit or a charitable organization.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Is another online question. Is there anything else being done to help residents and consumers deal with the financial hardship brought on by the pandemic?
Well, I think everybody knows the sad state of Illinois finances, and I think that we'd all love to say that we'll make everybody whole, but that's just not realistic, unfortunately. I know that Congress in Washington is talking about another stimulus program and potentially extending some of those benefits all the way until the end of January. This is a very, very unique time, and I think everybody can use a boost, but we need to also understand how and where those funds come from. So personally, I know of nothing that is imminent, but again, things can happen in a hurry in Washington as long as the House and Senate are in session, and they can move things along rather quickly.
Thank you. At this point, we're going to do another poll, and the question is, at this point, how worried are you about your own or your family's personal health? So where we stand today, how worried are you? Enter 1 for very worried, enter 2 for moderately worried, enter 3 for a little worried, or enter 4 for not worried at all. So how worried are you about your family's personal health? We have one other question that's about the latest about the fair tax and money at middle class legislation from John in Park Ridge. John, you should be live.
Thank you for taking my question. Basically, this is going to be dealing with the November election. Pritzker is pushing for his fair tax or graduated income tax and saying 3% is going to support 97%. Mathematically, we know that can't be done, and the majority of the money is in the middle class. And if we follow the example of other states, the middle class will get a tax increase. My question is, the second part of that, the legislation, is part of the legislation that we're working on right now going to work to eliminate the senior citizen exemptions for pensions, IRAs, etc.?
I have not heard that those exemptions will be lifted. on the fair tax amendment. I know that it was actually passed in the legislature before I was appointed to the seat, but I know that the Republicans vehemently fought for a provision in there to set the tax rates for the rest of that 97%, and there was a very strong unwillingness to do that. I believe that when and unfortunately, if this fair tax were to pass, that it's going to go beyond the top 3%. I believe when they first started talking about it, it was only going to affect the top 1%. So there's already been movement on that. I think that we need to just make sure that we do what we can to support defeating that measure. I would definitely support making sure that those senior exemptions are continued and stay in place. The 20th district is a lot of middle class folks, seniors that this could really affect, and in a bad way. So I support being fair, but I don't know that this fair tax is all that fair.
Okay, thank you. At this point on the poll, just want to remind people to take our poll. How worried are you about your family's personal health? Key 1 for very worried. Press 2 for moderately worried. Press 3 for a little worried, or press 4 for not worried at all. And we'll have results for you shortly. Now we've got another question from Christina, and it's asking about when we'll be able to get sports to open and larger events. Christina, you're on the line.
Yes, hello.
How are you?
I wondering when the entertainment venues, such as the Allstate, Rosemont Theater, will be opening up for concerts or live events.
Well, what's happened is the governor and his deputy governors are working with a group that makes recommendations to the Department of Public Health, the legal people, and DCEO. You mentioned all of those venues that are in my district, our district here, and we'd love to see some activity back in those venues, because not only does it provide entertainment for folks, it provides jobs, and people can get back to work and start making sure that they have the necessary resources to support a family. We, from the preliminary 5-phase program that the governor put forth back when he started issuing these orders, these edicts, phase 5 is where those venues will be able to open. There needs to be a vaccine and or treatment available, readily available for the virus in order to get to phase 5. But when we had a conference call at the beginning of the week, and they were talking about the multi-phases of phase 4, and they hide the egg on that one and keep all that stuff close to the vest on what those phases will look like. So again, that's going to be up to the governor's office. I'd wish it was tomorrow. I wish we could have one heck of a celebration at Parkway Bank Park here in Rosemont to signify the 4th of July. But still, the 6-foot social distancing and all those things that have been sort of mandated on us still remain, and until we get the clearance for that, we need to just unfortunately adhere to the Department of Public Health guidelines and hopefully sooner rather than later get these venues back open.
Thank you. We have results from our poll question. At this point, how worried about your family's personal health? 22% of people responded very worried. 39% of people responded moderately worried. 26% of people responded a little worried. And 13% of people responded not worried at all. So most people wound up somewhere in the middle.
And then that seems to be the feel of what people that I've talked to are saying as well. So it seems to be pretty accurate. And again, with that's along the lines of where I talked about how people are intelligent enough to know what, their comfort zone. I think that we need to continually advance openings and of these venues, these restaurants, places of gathering, to let people decide where and how they feel comfortable within that situation.
We have time for a couple more questions, and Kathy from Chicago is on the line asking about. Kathy, you're live.
Hi, thank you, Representative Stevens, for taking my question. My question is regarding our finest, the police. I'm somewhat worried about family safety because of what we've been seeing in the news, and we all know how terrible that first incident was with George Floyd. But now we're seeing things in Atlanta where the police are not going into work, and I don't blame them because they're not being treated fairly. And I'm just wondering, in your opinion, or what you have done or what you plan to do to support the police so that they will continue to go to work and protect us citizens.
Well, as I stated earlier, I'm a big supporter of all first responders, and I think that for the most part, our police, fire, and medics all operate within the law, and we have to understand that they're human beings as well, and some of these horrific situations that are happening are just unfortunately part of human nature, and it's not great, but I think that we need to, as I said, we need to adequately fund our police, and I think we need to try and understand what they deal with on the other side of an issue. I think some of these situations where they've called for firing and charges immediately, we need to take a breath and make sure that everybody's given due process and be treated fairly. Again, there's split-second decisions that are being made that you and I may not be able to deal with, but these highly trained people can, and unfortunately, there are some that just really just lose control of the situation, and unfortunate things happen. There are thing in Minnesota. I haven't heard anybody say that officer was right. That was just a bad situation. And again, somebody lost their life. That's horrific. That shouldn't be the case. So again, I will do what I can to support our police and stand behind them. Unfortunately, until they give me reason not to, and I have not seen that as police as a whole right now.
Thank you. And Carly also has a question on the current events. Carly, you should be live.
Thank you. Yes, thanks very much for taking the time today to do this. I just wanted to ask, so I know that the virus has brought to light some inequalities all around the city, and I know that you mentioned the incident with George Floyd that you were just talking about. So I wanted to know if you could elaborate just a bit more on what steps are being taken to improve diversity and inclusion just in the community.
Well, I think that we have to take a look at all of the issues that are being, I don't want to say being brought to light, but having a brighter light shined on them. And I think we need to work together on resolving those issues. I know one of them is education funding, which I know the previous year in the legislature, the legislature passed evidence-based funding, which, you know, moved some of that money from the more well-to-do districts to the not so fortunate areas. I know that there's a consent decree on policing that was enacted with Mayor Emanuel, and I believe Mayor Lightfoot at the time was part of COPA that was involved in all that. I think that you know, it's not going to be easy, but I think that there needs to be a focus on a little bit more investment in community development within neighborhoods that are in need. And I believe that access to health care is important as well. I think as you started out talking about the high number of Hispanics and African Americans that were hit by this virus, I think that that health care is important, and having access to health care is very important. So those, again, are issues that one person is not going to be able to resolve. This needs to be, you know, presented to the legislature to take a look at, and I'm more than willing to be one of those that helps get to a better place.
Thank you. Do you have time for one or two more questions?
Sure.
This one's coming from online. During this crisis, what have you learned about government or yourself as an elected official?
Ooh. I've learned that I'm not as computer savvy as I'd like to be. But you know, there's a lot of ways that we can communicate, and I think that you know, we need to just have an open mind on issues that may not be prevalent in our communities that affect us as a nation. And I think that in understanding that and finding resolve to some of those situations is extremely important. Having a couple of young kids, I worry about where our country goes and how it gets there. That's one of the reasons why I took this appointment. I want to be part of solutions, not part of problems or railing on single issues. I think that there are a lot of problems that plague America, and I think that anything that we can do at the statewide level to address those is extremely important for the future, not just for the present, but we need to start working on that now.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, and it's from Steve in Chicago, who has a question about the protests.
Okay.
Yeah, hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, first of all, Representative Stevens, thank you for having this forum and allowing us to listen to some of the important issues in the state, and also thank you for allowing me to speak. And my question, and you've had a couple questions similar to this, but my question is regarding to safety as a resident of the state of Illinois. I unfortunately witnessed some of the looting and rioting and protesting that went on the night of May 30th in downtown Chicago. And in my opinion, the police department were not able or were instructed not to intervene. And as a result, I saw stores being looted. I saw stores being burned. I saw people stealing from stores. And I just want you to know or want to ask, how is the state, because it doesn't appear that the city was going to protect us, how is the state prepared to protect their residents and, actually keep us safe?
Well, I think everybody that speaks on any of this stuff is all in favor of peaceful protests. I think that's part of Americana, and I think that's fine, and I agree with that. But the looting and the rioting, I believe, was just it was a cover for being able to create havoc and violence. It had no place in this, and I think that the actual protesters that want to see change believe the same thing. It was a heck of a few days, and I know that the governor activated some of the National Guard on the perimeter of the city, and we can all sit and second guess whether that was the right thing to do or to have them move in and assist the police a little bit more. Again, we can second guess until we're blue in the face. But I definitely believe that we need to have a strong presence in stopping that kind of activity. I understand that people are angry, but being angry doesn't mean that you should steal somebody else's property. There are ways that we can act in a civilized manner and address these situations. And again, I'm more than willing to be part of that conversation. I've been doing a lot of listening and trying to hear all sides of this of these issues. It's not just one, but I think that once cooler heads prevail, we can move in a direction that has a positive impact on all people.
Thank you. That's about all the time we have for question and answer. Representative Stevens, I just want to throw it back to you for some final thoughts.
Oh, thanks, David. I want to thank everybody for joining me here today. This is a way that we can communicate in these difficult times. I'd love to be out walking neighborhoods and interacting with folks on a more personal basis, but I just don't think that this is the right time for that. I'm proud of how our community has come together and want to express my thanks again to all the first responders, the healthcare workers and essential workers who have helped get us to this point where we are today. On that note, I want to just throw a plug for our Highlight a Hero program, which runs for another couple of weeks. You can go to repbradstevens.com/hero and nominate someone in our community going above and beyond to help our neighborhoods during this time. Winners will be awarded a gift card to a local restaurant, and then we can recognize the great public service as well as helping some of our businesses who have been struggling during these closures. If you're more comfortable just calling my office, grab a pen, and we'll give you that information right now. So, the office email is Stevens, STEPHENS, @ilhousegop.org. And the office phone number, anytime, please feel free to call, 773-444-0611. And then you can also sign up for email alerts at repstevens.com. Again, thank you all for participating this morning. Remember, the office is here to serve you, and reach out for anything you need. And to all the fathers out there, happy Father's Day and enjoy this wonderful weather. Thanks again.